I'm Ajaz Axe, and I am a sculptor and film director. I'm here today to talk to you guys about the Lamu Space Station and the power of stories. So why are stories important? Stories are pretty much the way that we filter and experience all of reality. A nation is a story, a religion is a story, a tribe is a story. Even your relationships with other people are a story. And right now, we're being sold a story all over the world that we are basically like a stage 4 cancer patient who has no hope. So we're seeing things like this constantly, right? They're devastating, right? Uncertain future, what's being driven by climate change. And this constantly is reinforcing this story around the world that life on Earth is basically hopeless. And the one possible cure for our stage 4 cancer is to go to Mars. And we are seeing a lot of propaganda about this space fantasy future, that we're going to leave Earth and we're going to go to another planet and start over again, and we're going to leave all of our problems behind. And obviously, this is a pretty problematic narrative because most of us are not going to Mars. And the reality is that life on Earth is still way better and way sexier than going to live on another planet. And so I was looking at these stories that we've been being sold, and I was trying to think about, how do we reframe these stories in a new way? How do we give people a sense of hope and a sense of agency in the stories that they're telling? At the time Donald Trump was president, he created this crazy thing called Space Force. And I thought, I really don't think we need to be weaponizing space right now. I don't think intergalactic warfare is the immediate future for most people. I think what we really need is an Earth force. We need to get people together all over the planet, and we need to create a new army of people ready to engage with how do we reverse climate change and create an exciting future. So I developed Earth Force Climate Command, and our tagline is Earth is sexier than Mars. And at the time, I was working with a number of organizations who work with refugees in Greece and the Levant. And an issue that kept coming up was how many young people who were living in the camps felt like they had no sense of purpose or meaning. And the mainstream story that was being promoted was this idea that these people who are arriving in these camps are there to be helped. And I thought, what if we subvert this narrative and we start to imagine that these people are there to help the places that they've arrived? And what if these young people were to take on this identity of being part of this globalized story about saving the future? So we began to develop different ways that we could use these space metaphors, these sort of the visual language that has been created in the world about the future, which is mostly related to space travel. We see this in the film industry, through NASA, and now through the billionaire space race. And we sort of hit upon this idea of creating a space station and bringing these ideas about the futures to our local communities. I've lived in Lamu, Kenya since 2010, and Lamu is an island that is about 60 miles south of the Somali border. It's about 300 miles from Nairobi. It is an island that has no cars because it was built in the 1300s by the Omanis, and the streets are too narrow to allow cars. So pretty much everything is moved by donkeys or by boats. And the way of life in Lamu is still, it has a very distinctive sense of place. They make most of the furniture, clothing, mats, baskets, almost everything that is sort of used in day-to-day life is still produced on the island. And so in many ways, Lamu is kind of the polar opposite of the space fantasy narrative. I was working on this project to sort of re-envision refugee housing in Kenya, because the largest refugee camp in the world is about 150 miles from Lamu on the Somali border. It's called Dadaab Camp. And at the time, people were living in these sort of plastic structures that were incredibly hot, or they were living in shipping containers, often without air conditioning. So I was thinking about what would be kind of cheap and renewable and a lot more appealing to live inside of than a shipping container. And that's how I started to work on these pods. And because I'd already had the Earth Force initiative going, I think that, you know, this idea of challenging the space fantasy narrative was in my mind. And at the time, Abdul Rop, who is here with us today, was also on the island, and a number of other artists. And I started sort of discussing with them this concept of what if we made a space station in Lamu? And there was just something about it that was really exciting and sticky and made all of us want to sort of start to engage with the world through this futurist lens. And as we started to look around us, we would see things like, this is a snack cart. And we would realize, you know, there's a way to sort of flip these things if you're looking at them with the framework of the space fantasy narrative. Suddenly it looks a lot like a space rover. So Abdul, I'd love to hand it off to you to just talk for a minute about how you got involved and, you know, what kind of initially excited you about the project.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name is Abdul Rop. I'm an artist from Nairobi. I'm a member of a collective called Brush 2 Art Studio. My main medium of expression is printmaking and sculpting. I came to be part of Lamu Space Station when I met Ajax in Lamu on February 2021. And when she shared the idea of, you know, of coming up with an interactive exhibition called Lamu Space Station, I was really excited to be part of it, because it's community rooted, and it allowed us as artists to come up with community led futuring and coming up with a good story for the future, which is rooted in the local community.
Lincoln got involved with the project through Abdul, and maybe Lincoln, you could just talk a little bit about how you first became part of the team and what you're excited about with the project.
Hello, Lincoln Mwangi, an artist. I work from Nairobi in the same collective as Abdul, Brush 2 Collective. And as Ajaz said, I came to be in contact with the Lamu Space Station narrative through Abdul. He's the one who introduced me to Ajaz, and we conversed about the story. And I was excited to be part of the narrative. I thought it was a good and an easier way to kind of let the community conceptualize about their future in this present time. And I thought that is that is a fun way of kind of connecting with the community about their futures, and that is how I came to be part of the Lamu Space Station team.
Yeah, and our last person who's here with us today is Joseph Chege. He is a photographer and filmmaker. And Joseph, maybe you could just talk a little bit about how you first heard about the project and got involved.
Hello, Joseph Chege, based in Lamu. I got into the project because of the internet, actually. I saw a lot of what was being done by the team on Instagram. And then I eventually came to the exhibition, and my mind just kind of was blown away at the work that had gone. And I was looking for ways to kind of engage with the team and also help in creating a collective future like they were doing. And so Ajaz Axe and the team got me in, and they allowed me to join them in creating these worlds and these new narratives through photography and film. And during the course of the project, we then developed various images and short films for the project, and that's how I got into it.
Great. And yeah, so we had a few other members of our team who aren't here today on the call. This is most of our team except for Joseph, who is usually behind the camera. So from left to right, it's Chege Monize. He's a sculptor and sign painter. Anna Mokera is a painter. That's me. Then Abdul Rop, who is a printmaker and sculptor. Lincoln Mwangi, who is a painter and an installation artist. And MT Sharif is a painter and installation artist. And the 7 of us started to really think about, how do you create a story about the future that would be exciting for the community to participate in. So we came up with this narrative that we had gone to Mars, colonized it, destroyed the planet, and then we return to Earth and we land in Lamu, and we find Lamu abandoned. We find signs that people have been living in the archipelago, but they've disappeared. And we build a new civilization from the things we've learned, both from our experience on Mars and what we find in the environment of Lamu. And so that storyline was basically just the framework we created so that we would have a container for all of the different kind of responses to that prompt. And that story, it was just, it's a way of creating a cohesive narrative around the future that then gives people the freedom to go in basically any direction that they want. So in the foreground, there's a piece by Chege Monize that's a sinking ship, which is called The Future. And it's sinking into a ocean of trash because ocean trash is a huge problem in Kenya. It's at the end of a current that comes across the Indian Ocean that makes it so that tens of thousands of tons of trash come up on the beach in Kenya every year. But we wanted to both frame these challenges and encounter these challenges, which we did quite a bit, and also to give hope for the future and imagine new stories that could come from the local resources and from the people and the organizations that were in the community. So we began playing around with building out this world. These are the Lamu spacesuits. Jeff Bezos spent millions of dollars developing his spacesuits because Bezos and Musk understand the power of propaganda and of world building in the narratives that they're creating. And so we were really just taking the some of the ideas that they had already been working on, and we were subverting them to work in our local environment. And maybe Lincoln, could you talk a little bit just about the idea of world building and how the narrative became such an important thing for us?
You know, like when interesting because the future, like when you think about the future is only kind of created in the imagination. And I think that is the power of like how propaganda and things like advertisement come to play. It brings this kind of a fantasy that something is attractive to you, and that was our key, like our point to like the whole idea is to kind of bring this create a narrative where people can imagine their future and kind of solve their problems with this with the things that are present in this in their community and in the space that they live in, and kind of think about something interactive that can kind of provoke bring this kind of bring this concept of a hopeful future, because like the first thing we did with our narrative is kind of observe the environment that we were working with, and we kind of, it was the idea is kind of, we found that the idea is kind of apocalyptic, the space is apocalyptic, and how can we kind of provide a hopeful future, and kind of it's by bringing this creating this fun fantasy, and that is how we.
Joseph, could you maybe just talk a little bit about like creating that, using that visual language that we had to develop to sort of create the story, the visual story that you created with the images?
I think I was grateful to join in the stage that I joined in, because I felt that it was just about elevating what had already been made by Ajax and the team. So with the suits that had been made, the helmets, I think and we talk about world building, it was kind of what are the kind of worlds that these objects, these items would coexist in within the community. And so in order to create these worlds, we had to literally immerse ourselves into this time period that Ajax is talking about, the year 2799, and create a set in which where the cosmonauts themselves are actually living and interacting within the space. So that's how we went around creating the visuals, by actual immersion within the ecosystem, or rather the collective future that we as a collective have been thinking about. And then through that organic interaction of the spaces and of the objects, then we were able to come up with photos, sounds, and short films based around the project.
Yeah, and I think, you know, something that's come up a lot for us is this idea that this is an Afrofuturist project. And I'm going to let Abdul talk a little bit more about sort of our idea about futurism, Afrofuturism, and its usefulness in this vision that we're trying to create.
Thank you very much. When we started the project and started engaging in the conversation with the team, the story of futuring and coming up with different narratives got us into thinking, as which category did the whole project fall into, and since we are in Africa and thinking about futuring, I think it falls into African futurism, because it's it's a concept of people looking at their challenges in Africa and, you know, through their own experiences, coming up with solutions for their challenges. While Afrofuturism is a subcategory of science fiction that is like a global narrative that is sold through films, majorly films, and comic books. It's like an attempt to bridge the gap in you know, from the past and the future, and try to include the people, the Black people in the diaspora.
Yeah, and so this was you know, something that I think really became an interesting issue for all of us, was thinking about, you know, where do we fit into this bigger cultural conversation that's going on all over the world about, you know, this concept of Afrofuturism. And I would say that more than anything else, what we're sort of trying to promote is local futurism, and the idea of building a story that is specific to where you are, because Windhoek and Addis Ababa are very, very different places. And to think that, you know, there's going to be a one size fits all narrative for a continent that's as diverse as Africa, I think is not the way to come up with the best solutions for each place. So to end today, because we're running out of time, I would love to show you this brief video that Joseph Chege made. And I hope that you guys will all come up with amazing new visions in your own communities for the future.